I mean, I think at a very basic level, the trust is that we have some unwritten or maybe written rules of execution, behavior in front of the client, in internally between the team members, and some level of the confidence that each of us will act in a certain way. So that's my informal definition of what trust looks like.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we talk about the culture of trust. When you have trust in your organization, you're going to have more fun at work. I believe you will perform at a higher level. Your bottom line will be stronger, and you won't have to deal with the, let's say, bullshit that you have to deal with when you don't have trust with the people around you. Our special guest today is the CEO of Shelf or The Shelf. They do influencer marketing. They've been on the Inc. 5000. We were talking with Atul Singh about the culture of trust. We dive into what happens when trust is broken. What happens? How do we hire people that we can inherently trust? He's got some different thoughts around this. I think you'll appreciate that. Hopefully you'll learn a lot and appreciate this message as much as I do. Trust is such a critical element. And when it's absent, it's no fun at work. And leading that team to a higher level of performance just really isn't possible. So my name is Gene Hammett. I am an executive coach. We do leadership development and CEO coaching for fast growth companies or companies that really have a big opportunity in front of them. And they know that they've got to be aligned. They've got to really have all things working together, maybe even higher levels of trust. And that's what we do to really put the work I do into kind of a context of your business. Now, if you're curious about how that would impact you, what you're missing, what's standing in the way of predictable success and sustainable growth for your company, then you just go to gene@genehammett.com. That's my email address. Let's have a chat. I don't have any fancy ways to connect with me on this, but just use this email. We will dive into it. I've got a bunch of tools and frameworks that will help us zero in on what's really going on, what's standing in your way, and help you give you insight around these things. And these tools will paint a picture for you that you can either execute on it yourself or you can ask me or my team to help you. And I'm happy to give away that for free because I know the power and the value of this. Just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. Just mention you heard me on the podcast. Happy to help you. Now, let's talk about the culture of trust with Atul. Atul, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. We're having a great conversation about the culture of trust. Before we dive into that, tell us about your company, The Shelf.
Shelf is an online influencer marketing agency, and what we do at a very high level is help our brands find social media influencers to create buzz around their products, get them more consumers, and really understand what drives those online conversations around their products. So that's a high level of what we do.
So I know a little bit about influencers. I see them through my social channels and whatnot. Where do you think this is going over the next 3 years?
I think it's going to become even more important. What we are seeing right now is that TV and all earlier marketing channels, they are becoming less relevant, and online consumers are spending more and more time on social media networks like TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and they're also purchasing a lot of product on these channels. They're influenced by influencers to identify these new products, new cultural movements, things like that. TikTok did a recent study which showed that Gen Z folks actually use TikTok for more than Google for search. So I think there is a fundamental shift that is happening, and I believe personally that we are at an early stage, even though the space is growing. I think we still believe that it's an early stage of how it will influence consumers.
I agree with all the things you've said. I'm sure I've been influenced by influencers. We'd like to think
You
we're
are an
not.
influencer.
In a way, I am, but I do it from creating the best content I can and having people like you on the show, and I appreciate that. But it's not my primary goal. Atul, We know that it takes more than just you to create the kind of success that you've had. You've had some incredible success through the Inc. Over was it 1,667 was your rank out of 5,000. 3-year run rate, about 70 employees. What do you think is the main contributor to the success of your company?
I think that at least two things. I think being a right time at the right place with this market, it's going really, really well. So that is providing us a lot of amazing opportunities to really help our customers. It's a new channel. A lot of people don't know about how to use it or leverage it. And the second thing, honestly, is the people that we have. Finding folks, recruiting them who really appreciate and love being part of this space. I think that automatically creates this environment of innovation, problem solving that helps the customers. So it's a really a combination of those two.
Well, we're not going to be able to talk about the right time and right place because that's different for every industry and it's changing so
Yeah,
fast these days. But people is what we really brought you here to talk about, and specifically creating a culture of trust. When I know what I mean by trust, but do you have, a different definition or one that we can align around today?
that's a difficult question. I mean, I think at a very basic level, the trust is that we have some unwritten or maybe written rules of execution, behavior in front of the client, and not in internally between the team members, and some level of the confidence that each of us will act in a certain way. So that's my informal definition of what trust looks like.
When you are finding people that you can create this culture of trust, is there an interview question or something you're looking for to see if they actually worthy of the trust of the whole team?
I think there are definitely elements of trust that we try to identify, like doing reference checks and things like that. Even the looking at the historical tenure of those folks at their past jobs tells us a lot about the kind of trust they might have had, because it will be hard for somebody to keep their job if nobody trusts them. Um, I think that is two important factors that we take into account. And during the interview process too, if they are assigned a project and they tell us that they will do it in that particular time frame, and if they say that they're an expert at this particular topic, they have many years of experience, the timeliness of the result that they're producing plus the quality of work is indirectly telling us about the trust. And I think the final thing I would say is that when you hire people, there is inherently a leap of trust or leap of faith, leap of trust that you take both sides, us as well as the employees. So we start with a high level of trust, but there is a phrase in computer science, and it's not a computer science phrase, I would say, but it's cultural, is trust but verify.
I like the trust but verify, and I think a lot of people think that the verify is micromanagement. And I don't see it that way. I see it as accountability, and it's not something that we should shy away from. When you think about trust but verify, what does it look like across your culture?
That's you are really asking the most difficult question. There's something that really really hits home right away. It's I think it also goes to the recent article that Airbnb founder was talking about. Like you're as a founder, you're gaslighted from both sides. People on top or the managers or investors are like, you need to trust your team to do their jobs, and you need to, otherwise how would you scale? People you manage are telling you that you are not letting me do my job. You hired the best people. You should trust us to do the job. But when you dig deeper for the verification piece, because at the end of the day, as a company, we are accountable to our customers to provide them the best service. That's where our accountability starts and ends, and more than what they're expecting. And so if we don't check and verify, that's not how it works. The client is not giving us unverified dollars on, like, they check the work. So I think it's really the trust starts high, but you have to continue hard to dig into low level things to maintain and actually have even more trust. That's what I would tell people, that if you really want that kind of deep trust with your managers, with employees, I think it all is in the details, that whether we are able to accomplish what we promised to each other, to our clients.
The second time you've said this, I want to point it out for everyone because I want to ask you a question about it. You said trust starts high. I think the common phrase for a lot of people is trust is earned. I tend to agree with you that I will trust someone until there's a reason not to trust them. But in certain domains, at certain if you're going to be with my child or my dogs, might be a little bit more care of that.
Yeah, yeah, yep, yep.
But how do you wrestle with the people that don't believe that trust starts high?
That's a good question, first of all. I think the trust is built or high is in this context of hiring people after a hiring process, right? So we go through this interview process, we have multiple stages, then we have reference checks. So we are relying a little bit on this process to get us a sense of trust about their accomplishments, their expertise. We are not getting the trust about their behavior because that's hard to see, observe by just talking to the third party. So trust in terms of the expertise, it starts higher. But I think to maintain the trust and build on that trust, that's where it's the hard part that you need to really deliver as who is hired to have that confidence in you that, okay, the other people who hired you are actually trusting you. So I think but at the same time, I believe that especially in the work environment, you have to have some level of trust with your new people. Otherwise, there is no way to give them freedom to execute in the way that they think is right. Of course, with the guardrails. That way they feel the freedom and you want to always hope that you get lucky and found the best people and you don't have to ever manage them at that level and they just go crazy and deliver. So that's the best case, and we want to hope for that. You want to optimize for that. But of course, if you run into issues, you have to have guardrails to prevent you from somebody causing big problems.
Now, one of the things that Tool just said was maintaining trust. Like you can give trust, but how do you maintain it? Well, I think as leaders, there's only one thing that you have to keep in mind. There's a lot to it, but that one thing is lead by example. I've reminded this of my clients for years, but when you lead by example, you are showing to people what is possible. You are walking the talk. You are doing the things that you are asking them to do. Don't say just because I told you to. Don't say yeah, that's just the way it's done. Show people how it's done. Lead by example. When you look at maintaining trust, you also have to realize that when you tolerate people who are breaking trust over and over and over, even if you're giving them the tough conversations and they're not doing this, you owe it to everyone around you to let those people go and let them find a place that they're supposed to be. Back to Atul. A culture of trust, in my opinion, cannot be built by micromanagers. I get why people micromanage because they've been burned and they want to make sure that things are going right. And they don't even realize that they're crossing the boundaries of micromanagement, I think. And that's one reason why we have to coach those around us to be the best leaders they can be. But when you notice people are peeking into that micromanagement, how do you address that?
I think I might be one of those people that people may think that I micromanage. So it's hard for me to answer that question fairly or unbiased way. But I think what you said is absolutely right that people who have been burnt in the past, people who want to control and check things, um, I think we need to have a system, especially what I have told our team sometimes is that it's a flexible thing that you start with a good amount of verification in the beginning. And as you verify your team over time, if they start to deliver great performance and you're not changing a lot of things and you are happy with their work, the frequency of those checks and all those things should reduce so that the other party feels more trusted and there is a lot less feeling of micromanagement. So it has to be a very flexible system that you can build over time. And that's the only way to also scale as a manager. So, but it is very hard to do. And this is the scenario where building the trust takes a long time, but one or two big mistakes all of a sudden can erode trust that you may have built for years.
Now, I asked the question about how do you address micromanagement when it's getting in the way? some people need a little bit of micromanagement. I will say that if you're a, extremely new employee and you don't know what you're doing, you need a lot more oversight and you need a lot more structured approach to this. And the check-ins are going to be much more frequently. Now, when you're an expert or when you're, got some years or months under your belt sometimes, then you have a little bit more freedom. But how do you address this when you have a leader that is micromanaging? Well, first of all, you've got to get to the root cause of it. Why don't they trust their team? Why is this happening? What does it look like? What does it look like when you're not micromanagement, but you're just holding people accountable? Make distinctions between these things. These are great conversations for you to have with your team if you feel like there's a micromanager in there. I've got an incredible chart that will help you with this. And if you want me to send it to you, the 5 levels of leadership, I've got a lot of content around it, but if you want me to give it to you and explain it to you and give you some content around it, some context, just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com for the 5 levels of trust. And I'm happy to give it to you for absolutely free. Back to Atul. Now we go into, which I think is harder. Sometimes we have to rebuild trust. I've got clients that have been through this at the executive level. I've got clients that it didn't work. Do you have any kind of rules of rebuilding trust with your team members when trust has been broken?
It depends on what level, right? I think small mistakes, like if somebody miscalculated some numbers and small things. I think Bezos had a very good, comes to my mind is the doors that can be reopened. That's fine. You can build trust, rebuild trust if those are those type of mistakes. If you open a door that cannot be reopened or closed, right? So then that's a mistake that somebody cannot recover from. And those are mistakes that every level have. And like I can commit a mistake that the company cannot recover from. And there's no way for other people to rebuild the trust in me, in my company, if I make that kind of mistake.
Atul, as we begin to land the plane here, leadership is one of the core elements of fast growth companies that they tend to get things right. Not everything, but what are your leadership principles that guide your company to the success that you've had?
We're still, I would say, on the path to success.
Okay.
We still have a lot to accomplish, but I would say I'm always trying to think about what are our 10x multipliers in anything that you're doing in the team company at any level. If I can find and recruit somebody who is much more smarter than me, that not only helps them do their job, but relieves me of my duties, and they're doing a far better job than me, then potentially that's a 10x higher. If my team member can spot somebody in their team that they're managing and who can do that kind of job, that's a 10x multiplier. So AI is in some senses is a 10x multiplier. So right now we are kind of trying to figure out a gamification of how do we get our team to use AI. And the thing is that nobody wants to try something new. Nobody. They're already too busy. So we have to figure out a way to do that. So I think that to me is innovation, and I think 10x multiplier. Those two things, like what problems can we solve today that can really make a difference? How can we automate, optimize, and 10x multiply the results for ourselves? And that will reflect in the results that we will provide to our customers.
Atul, the circle of trust or a culture of trust is something that I think a lot of people want to create. What are the first 2 steps of creating a culture of trust when it hasn't been present? So if you think about it, just going back and looking at how you guys have created this organization, the team, what are the first 2 steps of a culture of trust?
I think being, I would say, open about your own mistakes and accepting them, showing vulnerabilities, and that we all in this together, as long as we are accountable. I think that's where, because we all are humans and we are in the online digital marketing agencies. We are not doctors trying to save lives, right? We can make mistakes, and mistakes are not going to be deadly. So some can be, but I think it's just the majority of the time it's okay. I think so people need to have that feeling of confidence and comfort that it's okay to make a mistake, accept responsibility, and figure out a way to not commit that again. I think the hardest part is when you have potentially people who are not a good fit in the culture and not happy, and they are just vocal about it. And because of the culture that you have set up, it's hard for the people to step in and share that information. So it hurts everybody in the long run, until the problem is fixed. So I think that to me is a harder part of maintaining that level of trust.
Well, we've had a great conversation today, Atul, about your company, Shelf, and about this culture of trust. I appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Wow, what a great interview. I love talking about elements like trust. We don't talk about them enough inside of business, but when we do, we have these rich conversations. So Atul and I had a great conversation around trust. I wonder what that would be for you. If you sat down with your team and talked about trust, if you talked about, what's getting in the way of trust, how do we rebuild trust when it's been broken? And what are the things that we really need to be saying to each other to trust each other even more? Those are incredible opportunities for you with your executive team or even your management team to really take things to that next level, creating a culture of trust. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.